3-year-old Aria's tiny voice cracked on the high note, but she didn't stop singing, because if she won the $50,000 prize, the scary men would stop hurting Mama. Her small fingers clutched Mr. Buttons, her worn teddy bear with the missing eye, as she stood alone on the enormous stage. The lights were so bright they made her squint, and the stage felt as big as their whole motel room. Maybe bigger. Her pink dress, the one Mama had stayed up all night sewing from an old curtain, swished around her knees as she shifted her weight from foot to foot. She couldn't see the people watching. Couldn't see anything past those hot, white lights. But she knew they were there, waiting. "Sing, baby," Mama had whispered that morning, her hand so cold when she touched Aria's cheek. "Sing the special song I taught you. The one that's just ours." So Aria sang. The melody floated out sweet and pure, a lullaby that seemed older than memory itself. She didn't understand all the words, some were in a language Mama said was from the old country, but she knew them by heart. Had known them since before she could remember. The song made her feel warm inside, like sunlight through a window. Like Mama's arms when they still felt strong. 2 days earlier, Aria had pressed herself against the bathroom door of their motel room, making herself as small as possible. The scary men were back. "You're 2 months behind, Elena," the tall one growled. "My patience is gone. Please." Mama's voice sounded so tired. "I just need more time. The treatments. Should have thought about that before you borrowed money you couldn't pay back." Through the crack in the door, Aria watched Mama flinch as the man raised his hand. She wanted to run out, to protect her, but Mama had made her promise to hide when the bad men came. After they left, Mama held her so tight it almost hurt. "There's a talent show," Mama whispered into her hair. "The national showcase. Big prize money. You could win, baby. I know you could. Your voice is special. So special." Back on stage, Aria reached the chorus. Her voice rose higher, clearer, carrying a power that seemed impossible from such a small child. The melody twisted through the auditorium like smoke, beautiful and ancient and wild. At the judges' table, Alpha King Dante Blackthorn felt the song slam into his chest like a physical blow. His wolf surged forward so violently he had to grip the arms of his chair to stay seated. Every instinct screamed at him to move, to act, to claim. The scent hit him next, beneath the generic soap and cheap fabric softener, beneath the human smells of the crowd, he caught it. His bloodline. His daughter. Impossible. Dante's dark eyes locked on the tiny figure bathed in spotlight. 3 years old, maybe 4. The timing was right. The scent was unmistakable. But the woman, Elena, had vanished the morning after the peace summit. He'd searched for months. Used every resource at his command. Found nothing. She'd been human. Or so he'd thought. The other judges were leaning forward, transfixed by the child's performance. They were all human, talented in their respective fields but deaf to what Dante heard beneath the melody. This wasn't just a song. It was a call. An ancient werewolf mating song, the kind taught from mother to daughter in the oldest bloodlines. Which meant Elena had lied about more than just her name. The song built toward its climax. Aria's voice soared, achingly beautiful, and Dante watched her little face scrunch with concentration. She was so small. So fragile. The protective instinct that roared through him was overwhelming, primal, undeniable. "Mine," his wolf snarled. "Ours. Protect." Then, mid-note, Aria's voice faltered. Her eyes went wide. Frightened. She swayed on her tiny feet. Dante was already moving when he saw the gold flash across her irises. Wolf eyes. In a child not even 4 years old. Too young, far too young, for a first shift. Something was wrong. Aria's knees buckled. The teddy bear dropped first, tumbling across the polished stage. Then the child herself began to fall, her small body crumpling like a puppet with cut strings. Dante vaulted over the judge's table with supernatural speed, moving faster than human eyes could track. Gasps erupted from the audience. Someone screamed. He didn't care. The only thing that mattered was reaching her before. He caught her mid-air, pulling her against his chest. Her heart was racing, hammering like a frightened bird. Too fast. Her skin burned with fever. The gold in her eyes flickered and faded, her wolf retreating as quickly as it had surfaced. "Call an ambulance," one of the judges shouted. "No hospitals," Dante snapped, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority that came with being Alpha King. He gentled his tone as he looked down at the child in his arms. "Aria. Can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open. Confused. Glazed with fever. She looked up at him, and for a moment, he saw Elena's face in the curve of her cheek, the shape of her mouth. His daughter. His pup. "Mama?" Aria whispered, her small hand clutching at his jacket. Did I win? Can we help Mama now?" "Shoo, Piccola. You did beautifully." The endearment came naturally, Italian mixing with English the way it always did when his emotions ran high. "Where is your mother? Is she here?" Aria's head lolled against his shoulder. Her words came out slurred, confused, edged with delirium. "Mama's sleeping. She sleeps a lot now. Ever since since." She trailed off, her eyes drifting closed again. Dante's jaw clenched. He needed to get her somewhere safe, somewhere he could examine her properly, figure out why her wolf was trying to emerge so young. He stood, cradling her carefully, and turned toward the stage exit. Security was already rushing toward him, along with paramedics and show officials, but one look from Dante stopped them in their tracks. Alpha dominance rolled off him in waves, an invisible force that made even the humans hesitate. "The child needs specialized care," he said flatly. "I'll handle it." "Sir, you can't just," one of the producers started. "I can. I am." Dante's eyes flashed gold, just for a second. "Anyone who tries to stop me will regret it." Nobody moved. He was halfway to the exit when Aria stirred again in his arms. Her voice came out small and drowsy, barely more than a breath against his shoulder. The words struck him like silver bullets. "Mama says, never tell anyone, about the mean Alpha King, who left us." Dante froze mid-step. The child's eyes were closed, her words clearly delirious, pulled from fevered dreams and fragmented memories. But the pain in them was real. The abandonment. The fear. "Who left us?" "Elena," he breathed, finally understanding. Finally knowing why she'd run. "Dio, what have I done?" But Aria was already unconscious again, her small body limp in his arms, her breathing shallow and rapid. There would be time for guilt later. Time for explanations and apologies and the 1,000 questions burning through his mind. Right now, his daughter needed him. For the first time in 3 years, Alpha King Dante Blackthorne knew exactly what he had to fight for. He just had to find the woman who'd spent those same 3 years teaching their daughter to fear his name. Chapter 2. The private medical facility existed in a place that didn't appear on any human map, tucked into the mountains north of the city where the Blackthorne pack had held territory for 3 centuries. Dante carried Aria through corridors that smelled of antiseptic and pine, his wolf prowling just beneath his skin, agitated and protective. Dr. Sarah Chin met them at the entrance, her face carefully neutral despite the shock he knew she must feel. In all his years as Alpha King, Dante had never brought a child here. Never had reason to. "Exam room 3, she said briskly, falling into step beside him. "What are her symptoms?" "Premature wolf emergence. High fever. Loss of consciousness." Dante's arms tightened fractionally around Aria's small form. "She's 3 years old, Sarah." The doctor's composure cracked. "That's impossible. The youngest recorded emergence is 7, and even that was. I know what it should be. Fix what it is." They worked on Arya for over an hour. Dante refused to leave, standing like a sentinel at the foot of the examination table while Sarah and her team of pack healers ran tests, drew blood, checked vitals. Arya remained unconscious throughout, her small chest rising and falling too rapidly, her skin still flushed with fever. His daughter. His pup. And he hadn't even known she existed. The rage simmering beneath his careful control wasn't directed at the child. It was directed at himself, for not searching harder, for accepting Elena's disappearance too easily, for letting politics and pride blind him to what should have been obvious. And it was directed at Elena, for running, for hiding, for teaching their daughter to fear him. The mean alpha king who left us. Those words would haunt him for the rest of his life. He was staring at Arya's too pale face when the commotion started in the hallway. Shouting. The sound of a scuffle. Then a voice he recognized, even after 3 years, even distorted by panic and fury. Where is she? Where's my daughter? If you've hurt her, I swear I'll. The door slammed open. Elena stood in the doorway, wild-eyed and breathing hard, with 2 of his guards gripping her arms. She looked nothing like the woman he remembered from the peace summit. That woman had been carefully groomed, demure, playing a role. This Elena was raw and real, her dark hair tangled, her clothes wrinkled and cheap, her eyes blazing with a mother's protective fury. But beneath the desperation and the years of hardship, she was still beautiful. Still the woman whose scent had haunted his dreams for 3 years. His wolf surged forward with a recognition that staggered him. Mate. How had he missed it before? How had he been so blind? Let her go, Dante ordered quietly. The guards released her immediately. Elena stumbled forward 2 steps, her eyes finding Arya on the examination table, and the sound that tore from her throat was pure anguish. Arya. Baby, no. No, no, no. She rushed toward the table, but Dante moved to intercept her, placing himself between mother and child. Elena's head snapped up, and the look she gave him could have melted steel. Get out of my way. She's stable. Dr. Chen is taking care of her. I don't care about your pack doctor. That's my daughter. Move, or I'll make you move. Despite everything, the tension, the anger, the years of separation, Dante felt his lips twitch. There was the fire he remembered. You can try, Piccola Lupa. Don't call me that, Elena hissed. You don't get to use pet names. You don't get to act like we're anything to each other. We have a child together. That makes us something. We have a child you didn't want. That makes us nothing. The words hit harder than any physical blow. Dante's jaw clenched. I didn't know about her. If you'd told me. What? You'd have claimed her? Claimed me? Elena's laugh was bitter and sharp. I was a gift, Dante. A political offering from a rival pack to seal a peace treaty. What we did that night was duty. Obligation. You made that clear when you couldn't get away from me fast enough the next morning. That's not, Dante started, but Elena wasn't finished. I found out I was pregnant 2 weeks later. Found out what I was carrying, an heir to the Alpha King's throne, and I knew exactly what that meant. My pack would have killed me for the dishonor of bearing your child out of wedlock. Your pack would have rejected me as unworthy. And you? Her voice cracked. You would have taken her from me and raised her as duty, not love. So I ran. I ran, and I kept her safe, and I did the best I could. By running from loan sharks. By living in motels and entering her in talent shows for prize money? Elena flinched. I did what I had to do to survive. To keep her safe. To keep her hidden. Hidden from me. Yes. The admission came out fierce and unapologetic. Hidden from you. Hidden from the politics and the power plays and the pack warfare that would have destroyed her. She's just a baby, Dante. Just a little girl who likes teddy bears and singing and bedtime stories. She's not a pawn. She's not a weapon. She's not. She's mine, Dante growled, and the alpha dominance in his voice made Elena take an involuntary step back. She is my daughter, my blood, my heir. You don't get to decide that I don't deserve to know her. You don't get to teach her that I'm something to fear. You are something to fear. Elena's eyes flashed gold. Look at where we are. Look at what you've already done, swept in, took her, brought her to your territory without my permission. You're proving everything I was afraid of. I saved her life. You stole her. I caught her when she fell. Their voices had risen to shouts. Dr. Chen cleared her throat pointedly from where she stood beside Arya's bed. Perhaps we could continue this discussion outside? The child needs rest. Dante and Elena glared at each other for another long moment, years of hurt and anger and misunderstanding crackling between them like electricity. Then Elena's shoulders sagged slightly, exhaustion finally catching up with adrenaline. I need to see her, she said, her voice quieter now. Please. I need to touch her, to know she's really okay. Dante stepped aside. Elena rushed to the bedside, her hands hovering over Arya's small form as if afraid to actually make contact, afraid she might break something. Then she sank into the chair beside the bed and carefully, so carefully, took her daughter's hand. I'm here, baby, she whispered. Mama's here. You're safe. You're okay. Watching them, Dante felt something crack open in his chest. This was his family. His mate and his daughter. And he'd lost 3 years with them, 3 years he could never get back. Dr. Chen approached him, her expression grave. Alpha, we need to talk. About the test results. Dante followed her to the far corner of the room, though his eyes never left Elena and Arya. Tell me. Arya's not just experiencing premature emergence. She's... Sarah hesitated, then pulled up a tablet, showing him genetic sequencing that meant nothing to his eyes but clearly meant everything to hers. She's a true blood. The world seemed to tilt sideways. That's impossible, Dante said flatly. True bloods are myths. Legends. They're extremely rare, but they're not myths. The last documented case was in 1847, in the European Pax. A true blood is a genetic anomaly, someone who carries the pure, undiluted essence of the first werewolves. They can command any wolf regardless of rank or pack affiliation. They're stronger, faster, more powerful than any alpha. And there. She paused. They're extremely valuable. Or extremely dangerous, depending on who's doing the assessment. Dante's blood ran cold. Who else knows? Just me and my team. But Dante, if word gets out. Sarah didn't need to finish the sentence. If word got out, every pack in the region would either try to control Arya or eliminate her. A true blood was a threat to every existing power structure. A child who could command alphas, who could reshape pack hierarchies with a word, who could grow into the most powerful werewolf in existence. She was either the ultimate weapon or the ultimate target. Maybe both. No one can know, Dante said firmly. Put a lock on her medical records. Anyone who talks about this answers to me personally. Already done. But Dante, there's another issue. Her early emergence, it's because she's trying to protect herself. True bloods have instincts that kick in when they sense danger. Her wolf is trying to surface because she knows, on some level, that she's in danger. That means Elena wasn't being paranoid. Someone really is after them. Exactly. Dante turned back to the bed, where Elena was now singing softly to Arya, the same lullaby the child had performed on stage. The ancient mating song. He understood now why Elena had taught it to her. It was pack knowledge, passed from mother to daughter, the kind of thing you kept alive even when everything else was lost. Before he could return to them, the door opened again. Marcus, his beta and oldest friend, entered with a grim expression. We have a problem, Marcus said. The council is convening. Emergency session. They heard about the child. How? Dante demanded. Someone from the talent show recognized you. Posted it online. Alpha King Dante Blackthorn catches mysterious child. It's going viral. The council wants answers. They want, Marcus's eyes flicked to Elena, then back to Dante. They want you to issue a formal rejection. Both of them. Claim it was a case of mistaken identity and send them away. Dante's wolf snarled in fury. Absolutely not. Dante, think about this. The woman is from the Crescent Ridge Pack. We've been at peace with them for exactly 3 years, and that peace is fragile. If they find out you have a child with one of their wolves, a child you acknowledged publicly, it could be seen as a claim on their territory. It could reignite the war. Then let them try to start a war, Dante growled. I'm not rejecting my daughter. You might not have a choice. The council. The council answers to me. The alpha dominance in his voice made Marcus take a step back, neck baring in automatic submission. I am the Alpha King. Arya is my heir. Anyone who has a problem with that can challenge me for the position. Elena had gone very still at the bedside, listening. When she spoke, her voice was carefully controlled. I know what this means for you politically. For your pack. I'm not asking you to claim us. In fact, I'd prefer if you didn't. Just, let us go. Let us disappear again. We're good at it. No. Dante crossed to her, crouching down so they were eye level. You're not running again, Elena. Not from me, not from anyone. You can't keep us here against our will. I can. I am. And before you threaten me again, he held up a hand. Hear me out. You said the loan sharks threatening you weren't normal. What did you mean? Elena's face shuddered. It doesn't matter. It matters to me. Tell me the truth. All of it. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, slowly, she seemed to deflate. They're not loan sharks. They're rogues from my old pack. From Crescent Ridge. They sensed Arya's power awakening about 6 months ago. Started tracking us. They want to take her back to the pack elders, to use her to challenge your authority and restart the war. Dante's blood turned to ice. Why didn't you go to the human authorities? And tell them what? That werewolves are after my werewolf daughter? I had no proof, no evidence. And even if I did, what could humans do against rogues? Elena's voice cracked. I've been running for months. Moving every few weeks, never staying anywhere long. But they keep finding us. And the money, I needed money to get far enough away, to disappear somewhere they'd never look. The talent show was my last chance. $50,000 could have gotten us to Canada, maybe overseas. Somewhere Arya could grow up safe. You should have come to me, Dante said quietly. You're the last person I could come to. You're the reason they want her. She's valuable because she's your heir. Because her blood could legitimize a challenge to your throne. She wasn't wrong. Dante wanted to argue, but she wasn't wrong. What about the true blood issue? Marcus asked from behind them. If they know. They don't, Elena interrupted. No one knew. I didn't even know. I just knew she was special, that her wolf was stronger than it should be. She looked up at Dante, and for the first time, he saw real fear in her eyes. What does true blood mean? Dante explained, watching Elena's face go progressively paler as he laid out what their daughter was, what she could become, and what kind of target that made her. When he finished, Elena didn't speak for a full minute. Then she stood, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. Then we run, she said firmly. We take her and we run as far as we can. Maybe out of the country. Maybe. You can't run from this, Dante said. Elena, there's nowhere you can go that won't eventually. Then what? She rounded on him, tears streaking down her face now. What do you expect me to do? Stay here? Let you claim us? Watch as every pack in North America decides whether to worship my daughter or murder her. She's 3 years old, Dante. She should be worried about learning her ABCs and making friends at preschool, not being a political pawn in werewolf games. She'll be safer here than anywhere else. Under my protection. Your protection comes with strings. With expectations. With a crown she never asked for. Sometimes we don't get to choose our destiny. She should get to choose. Elena's voice broke. She should get to just be a child. Just be Arya. Not an heir, not a true blood, not a symbol or a weapon or anything except my baby girl who likes to sing and play with her teddy bear. Dante had no answer for that. Because she was right. Arya deserved a normal childhood. Deserved to grow up without the weight of centuries of pack politics on her shoulders. But the world didn't care what a 3-year-old deserved. The moment of silence stretched between them, heavy with everything they couldn't fix, everything they couldn't change. Then it shattered. Arya's eyes snapped open. She sat bolt upright in the bed, her irises blazing pure gold, not the flickering, uncertain gold of a child's first emergence, but the solid, terrifying gold of an ancient power awakening. When she spoke, it wasn't in English. Wasn't even in Italian or any modern language. The words that poured from her mouth were Old Tongue, the language of the first werewolves, dead for 1,000 years. But somehow, everyone in the room understood them. When the abandoned cub sings, 3 kingdoms fall, and the father must choose, crown or daughter. The voice wasn't Arya's. It was older, deeper, layered with harmonics that made the windows rattle and the lights flicker. A prophecy, spoken through a child who shouldn't know the language, shouldn't have the power, shouldn't be anything except a normal little girl. Then Arya's eyes rolled back, and she collapsed against the pillows, unconscious once more. In the ringing silence that followed, Elena's broken whisper seemed loud as thunder. What have we done to her? Dante had no answer. He only knew that everything, had just changed. And the choice the prophecy spoke of was already tearing him apart. Chapter 3. The video hit the internet at 3:47 a.m. Someone at the talent show had recorded Dante's supernatural speed as he caught Arya, and the footage, grainy but unmistakable, showed him moving faster than any human could. The caption read, Alpha King Dante Blackthorn saves mystery child. His daughter? Eyes wolf face. By dawn, it had 2 million views. By noon, 3 packs had mobilized their forces and were converging on Blackthorn territory. Dante stood in his war room, staring at the tactical display showing the approaching convoys, and felt the weight of a crown he'd worn for 15 years pressing down like a physical thing. Behind him, his council argued in heated whispers. Beside him, Marcus looked grim. The Crescent Ridge pack will arrive first, Marcus reported. Elena's original pack. They're bringing their full council and, he paused, an execution warrant. For Elena or Arya? Dante's voice was deadly quiet. Both. They're claiming Elena stole proprietary bloodline material when she conceived Arya without pack permission. And that Arya's existence is an illegal claim on their genetic heritage. That's insane. That's politics. Marcus pulled up another screen. The Silverpaw pack is 3 hours behind them. They're bringing a marriage contract. Their alpha has an infant son. They want to betroth him to Arya, unite the kingdoms through the next generation. Dante's wolf snarled. His daughter wasn't even potty trained yet, and vultures were already trying to barter her future. And the third group, he asked, though he already knew the answer would be worse. Rogues. At least 40 of them, organized and well-armed. Intel suggests they're the same faction that's been hunting Elena. They know about the true blood now, the prophecy got recorded too, and someone translated the Old Tongue. They want to take Arya, raise her as their own weapon. Over my dead body. That might be the only way to stop them. Marcus's voice was heavy. Dante, the council wants an emergency session. They have a proposal. The council chamber was old stone and older magic, carved from the mountain itself 300 years ago. 12 seats circled a central floor where Dante stood, feeling uncomfortably like he was on trial. Counselor Margaret spoke first. She was ancient, her hair white, her eyes sharp. Alpha King, we face an unprecedented crisis. 3 armies approach. War is imminent unless we act decisively. I'm aware. Then you're aware that the solution is simple. Her voice was gentle, but her words were knives. Denounce the child. Issue a public statement that she is not your heir, that any resemblance or connection is coincidental. We will stage her death and her mother's, a tragic accident, very believable. Then we'll relocate them somewhere safe, somewhere far from here, with new identities and pack protection. They live. You maintain political stability. Everyone wins. Except I lose my daughter and my mate. The word mate caused a ripple of reaction around the circle. They hadn't known. Dante hadn't known himself until Elena walked back into his life. But his wolf was certain now, had been screaming it since the moment he saw her in the medical facility. Counselor Thomas, younger and more aggressive, leaned forward. You don't have a mate, Alpha King. You have a political complication from a one-night encounter 3 years ago. There's a difference. Watch your tone, Dante growled, and the dominance in his voice made Thomas's wolf whimper into submission. That's my family you're discussing. That's the kingdom's stability we're discussing, Margaret interjected smoothly. Dante, we understand this is difficult. But you are the Alpha King first, Father second. The needs of the many. Don't quote philosophy at me. Dante's hands clenched at his sides. There has to be another way. There isn't, Marcus said quietly, and the betrayal in his beta's voice cut deep. I've run every scenario. Every possibility. This is the only path that doesn't end in war. Then maybe war is what we need, Dante snapped. Maybe it's time to remind every pack in this region why I'm the Alpha King. Why they should fear crossing me. And how many will die in that war? Margaret asked. How many pack members, your pack members, will lose their lives fighting over a child most of them have never met? Is her life worth hundreds of theirs? The question hung in the air like poison. Before Dante could answer, the chamber doors slammed open. Elena stood in the doorway, flanked by 2 very uncomfortable-looking guards. She was wearing borrowed clothes, a simple shirt and jeans that didn't quite fit, and her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked exhausted and furious and magnificent. I have a solution, she announced. Absolutely not, Dante said flatly. They were in his private office now, the council dismissed. Elena stood by the window, arms crossed, chin raised in defiance. Between them, the air practically crackled with tension. You don't get to decide this, Elena said. It's my right. Pack law allows it. Pack law was written 500 years ago by sadistic idiots. The right of severance is barbaric. The right of severance is legal. Elena's voice was steady despite the fear Dante could sense beneath her determination. I publicly challenge your claim on me and Arya. I fight your champion in ritual combat. If I win, all ties are severed, legally, magically, politically. Your kingdom is protected because I'll have taken full responsibility for Arya. No one can claim you had anything to do with her. And if you lose, you die. Then I die, and Arya becomes a tragic orphan with no connection to you. Either way, the political problem disappears. Dante moved fast, crossing the room in 3 strides to grip her shoulders. You are not dying for this. I won't allow it. You don't have a choice. I've already filed the formal challenge with your council. It's done. Then I'll refuse to name a champion. The right can't proceed without one. Elena smiled, and it was bitter and sad. Then pack law says you have to fight me yourself. Either way, I get my combat. Either way, this ends. Dante stared at her, understanding dawning like cold water. You planned this. You walked in there knowing exactly what you were going to do. I've been planning it since you brought me here. Since I realized you weren't going to let us just disappear. Elena's voice softened slightly. Dante, I know what you're trying to do. I know you think you're protecting us. But your protection comes with a price I'm not willing to pay. I won't let Arya grow up as a political pawn. I won't let her lose her childhood to pack politics and power struggles. This way, she goes free. This way, she grows up without a mother. Better that than growing up in a cage. The words hit harder than any physical blow. Dante's hands dropped from her shoulders. Is that what you think I'd do? Cage her? I think you'd love her, Elena said quietly. I think you'd want the best for her. But I also think you're the Alpha King, and that crown doesn't come off just because you want it to. You have responsibilities. Obligations. And eventually, one of those obligations would conflict with what's best for Arya, and you'd have to choose the kingdom. You'd have to. Because that's what being a king means. She wasn't wrong. God help him, she wasn't wrong. There has to be another way, Dante said, and he hated how desperate his voice sounded. If you think of one before the rite begins, I'm listening. The rite of severance was set for dusk, per tradition. Word spread fast, too fast. By the time Dante emerged from his office, the entire pack had gathered in the ceremonial grounds, along with representatives from the 3 armies camped at their borders. The Crescent Ridge pack sent their alpha and council, faces hard with judgment. The Silver Paw delegation arrived with their infant son in tow, already measuring Arya like livestock. And the rogues watched from the shadows, calculating, waiting. Dante stood at the center of the ceremonial circle, ancient stones marking the boundary. Elena entered from the east, barefoot as tradition demanded, wearing simple fighting leather someone had scrounged up. She looked small against the gathered crowd, but her spine was straight and her eyes were clear. Arya was with Dr. Chen in the medical facility, sedated and monitored. She didn't need to see this. Didn't need to watch her mother die. Because Elena would die. Dante knew it with grim certainty. She was strong, but she'd been weakened by years of running, by illness, by stress. His champion, he'd been forced to name Marcus, because anyone else would have been an insult, would try to be merciful, but the rite required blood. Required a decisive victory. There was no way Elena survived this. The ritual words were spoken. The circle was sealed. Marcus stepped forward, his face a careful mask, and Dante saw the apology in his beta's eyes. I'm sorry, Marcus said quietly, just for Elena. I'll make it quick. Don't apologize for doing your duty, Elena replied. Then she shifted. Her wolf was beautiful, smaller than most, with dark fur that gleamed in the fading sunlight. But there was something off about her form, something that made Dante's heart clench. She was trembling. Her injured leg barely supported her weight. She couldn't win this. She could barely stand. Marcus shifted too, his larger wolf moving into position. The fight began. It lasted less than a minute. Marcus was faster, stronger, better trained. Elena fought with desperate courage, but courage wasn't enough against skill and size. Marcus pinned her easily, his jaws at her throat, waiting for her to submit. She didn't. Elena, yield, Dante called out, his voice rough. Please. Just yield. Her wolf's eyes met his across the circle. There was no surrender in them. Only love and regret and fierce, protective determination. She was going to die rather than yield. Die rather than let Dante claim Arya. Marcus's jaws tightened, preparing for the killing bite. In the crowd, someone screamed. Dante moved forward instinctively, though he couldn't cross the circle. Pack law forbade interference. Then a child's voice cut through the chaos like a bell. Stop. Every head turned. Arya stood at the edge of the circle, her small form silhouetted against the setting sun. She must have woken up, must have escaped her guards, must have followed the bond that tied her to her mother. Her eyes were blazing gold. Not the uncertain flicker of a child's emergence, but solid, absolute gold. True blood gold. The command hit like a physical wave. Every werewolf present, Alpha King, Beta, council members, visiting packs, rogues in the shadows, froze mid-motion. Marcus's jaws locked open, unable to close. Elena remained pinned but alive. Dante found himself unable to move, his muscles locked, his wolf forced into absolute submission. A 3-year-old child had just commanded the Alpha King. Arya walked into the circle, her small feet padding across the ceremonial stones. No one stopped her. No one could move. She went straight to her mother, dropping to her knees beside Elena's wolf form. "Don't hurt Mama," Arya said, and her voice carried that same otherworldly resonance from the prophecy. "Don't hurt anyone." Then she did something impossible. Pack bonds were sacred, forged through ritual and time and shared blood. They couldn't be created instantly. Couldn't be forced. Couldn't exist between a child and dozens of adult werewolves simultaneously. But Arya was a true blood, and the old laws didn't apply to her. The bond snapped into place like a rubber band pulled too tight, connecting Arya to every werewolf present. Dante felt it slam into his chest: recognition, protection, pack. His wolf, which answered to no one, suddenly had an alpha. His 3-year-old daughter. Around the circle, others were experiencing the same thing. Shock rippled through the crowd as wolves realized what had happened. Some dropped to their knees instinctively, submitting to their new alpha. Others looked terrified. Counselor Margaret's voice shook as she spoke. "Pack law is clear. We protect our alpha above all else. All political allegiances are secondary to alpha protection." "She's a child," someone protested. "She's our alpha," someone else countered. The bond doesn't lie. Dante watched as 3 armies, enemies an hour ago, struggled with new instincts that demanded they protect the small girl crying over her mother's wolf form. The political landscape had shifted in an instant. Arya was no longer just his heir or a true blood anomaly. She was everyone's alpha. Which made her the most valuable, and most vulnerable, being in their world. The paralysis faded gradually. Marcus stumbled back from Elena, shifting to human form, looking shaken. Elena shifted too, immediately pulling Arya into her arms. "Baby, what did you do?" she whispered. "I saved you, Mama," Arya said simply. "The bad people wanted to hurt you, so I told them to stop. And now..." She looked around at the gathered wolves with confused gold eyes. "Now everyone feels weird. Did I do something wrong?" "No, sweetheart." Elena's voice cracked. "You didn't do anything wrong." But the look she threw at Dante over Arya's head said clearly, "See what your world does to her? See what she becomes when you force her into it?" Dante had no answer. He could only watch as his daughter, now technically his alpha, clung to her mother and cried, overwhelmed by powers she didn't understand and couldn't control. The council would convene. Decisions would be made. The 3 packs would have to negotiate this new reality. But first, they had to get through the night. Security was tripled. Guards posted at every entrance to the medical facility where Arya and Elena were staying. Dante coordinated protection details personally, his wolf restless and agitated beneath his skin. The pack bond pulled at him constantly now, urging him toward Arya, demanding he verify her safety every few minutes. It was disorienting, feeling that instinct toward his own daughter. Wrong in ways he couldn't articulate. He was in his office reviewing patrol schedules when Marcus burst in without knocking. "We have a situation." They found the assassin in Arya's room. Or what was left of him. The body lay crumpled in the corner, twisted in ways that shouldn't be anatomically possible. Blood painted the walls in arterial sprays, but the wounds, Dante knelt to examine them closer, his stomach turning, the wounds came from inside. Claw marks. From the inside out. As if something had torn through the assassin's body from within, shredding organs and breaking bones with surgical precision. Arya sat in her bed, Mr. Buttons clutched to her chest, eyes wide and confused. Elena stood between her daughter and the corpse, her face ashen. She can't have, Elena's voice shook. She was asleep. We were both asleep, and then I heard him scream, and when I woke up, he was already. Mama? Aria's small voice interrupted. Why is that man sleeping on the floor? Why is there so much red? Don't look, baby. Just don't look. Dr. Chen pushed past Dante into the room, immediately moving to examine Aria. Did she shift? Show any signs of? No, Elena insisted. Nothing. She's been in human form the whole time. I swear, she's been asleep, she couldn't have. But the claw marks told a different story. Sarah completed her examination quickly, then pulled Dante aside. There's no evidence of shifting. No traces of wolf scent beyond what's normal for her age. But Dante. She gestured to the body. Those wounds. They match a wolf's claws exactly. And the pattern suggests they originated from inside the body, tearing outward. How is that possible? I don't know. But if Aria's true blood power can create instant pack bonds, can command any werewolf, who's to say it can't manifest in other ways? Ways we've never seen before? Dante looked back at his daughter, still clutching her teddy bear, still asking why the sleeping man wouldn't wake up. She had no idea what she'd done. No memory of it. Which meant she could do it again. Could do it to anyone. The thought that should have terrified him. That his daughter was capable of killing in her sleep, of using power she didn't understand and couldn't control, instead filled him with a grim sort of pride. Let anyone try to hurt her now. Let them try. But as he watched Elena rock Aria gently, singing the old lullaby to calm her, Dante understood the real horror of what had just happened. Aria had killed to protect herself, and she didn't even know it. What else would she do without knowing? What other horrors would her power unleash? And how could they possibly keep her safe from herself? Get a cleanup crew in here, Dante ordered Marcus. Full discretion. No one talks about this outside this room. As far as anyone knows, the assassin was caught and eliminated by security. Dante. That's an order. Marcus nodded and left. Sarah followed after a last worried look at Aria. Alone with Elena and their daughter, Dante finally allowed himself to feel the full weight of fear pressing down on his chest. She's becoming a monster, Elena whispered. Your world is turning my baby into a monster. She's becoming powerful, Dante corrected quietly. There's a difference. Is there? Elena's eyes, when they met his, were full of accusation and grief. Look at her, Dante. Really look at her. She's 3 years old, and there's a corpse in her bedroom, and she killed him without even waking up. That's not power. That's a nightmare. Aria's voice drifted up between them, small and sleepy. Mama? Can we go home now? I don't like this place anymore. Elena's face crumpled, but she didn't cry. Just held her daughter tighter and whispered lies about how everything would be okay, how they'd go home soon, how nothing bad would ever happen to them again. And Dante, standing in a room painted with an assassin's blood, wondered if any of them would survive what his daughter was becoming. The prophecy echoed in his mind, when the abandoned cub sings, 3 kingdoms fall, and the father must choose, crown or daughter. He'd thought he understood what that meant. Now he realized he'd understood nothing at all. Chapter 4. The nightmares started 3 days after the assassin's death. Aria would wake screaming, her eyes blazing gold, her small body rigid with terror. The first night, Elena managed to calm her with soft words and gentle touches. The second night required an hour of rocking and singing. By the third night, Aria couldn't be comforted at all. There's a monster inside me, she sobbed against Elena's shoulder. It wants to hurt people, Mama. I can feel it trying to get out. Elena held her daughter and looked helplessly at Dante across the room. For once, the Alpha King had no answers, no commands, no political solutions. He could only watch his child suffer and feel utterly powerless. Dr. Chen had run every test imaginable. The results were impossible. She's not just a true blood, Sarah said, her voice shaking as she presented her findings to Dante and Elena in a private meeting. The genetic markers are different. Older. I had to dig through archives going back 8 centuries to find a match, and even then. She pulled up an ancient text on her tablet, the pages yellowed and fragile. Lecan Prime. That's a myth, Dante said flatly. So we're true bloods, until 3 days ago. But look at the characteristics: ability to command any werewolf regardless of rank, check. Power that manifests in early childhood, check. Abilities that go beyond standard wolf capabilities. Sarah gestured to the cleaned room where the assassin had died. Very much check. Dante, Lecan Primes weren't just leaders. They were apex predators that could unmake other werewolves at a cellular level. The last recorded prime destroyed an entire pack by simply willing them to stop existing. Elena's face drained of color. You're saying my daughter is a weapon. I'm saying your daughter is the most powerful werewolf born in 800 years, and she's 3 years old with no training, no control, and no understanding of what she is. Sarah's voice softened. She's terrified of herself, and she should be. Because right now, she's as dangerous to herself as she is to anyone who threatens her. Then we teach her, Dante said firmly. We find someone who can help her control it. There is no one. Lecan Primes were systematically eliminated centuries ago because they were too powerful, too dangerous. The knowledge of how to train them died with them. Then we find another way. The Oracle lived in a cave system deep in neutral territory, so far from civilization that even GPS couldn't track the location. Dante, Elena, and Arya made the journey with only Marcus as escort, leaving the pack behind. It felt strange, Dante thought, to be working alongside Elena as partners rather than adversaries. Strange but right. Over the past 3 days, they'd fallen into a rhythm, taking turns comforting Arya through her nightmares, researching Lecan Prime history together, standing united against the Council's increasingly desperate suggestions that Arya be contained for everyone's safety. He watched Elena now as she carried their sleeping daughter through the narrow cave passages, her hand protective on Arya's back, her wolf close to the surface and alert for any threat. She was beautiful in her fierceness. Beautiful in her fear and her love and her absolute refusal to give up. His mate. He knew it with bone-deep certainty now. Had probably known it 3 years ago but been too proud, too political, too blind to acknowledge it. The Oracle was ancient, her human form so old it was impossible to tell how many centuries she'd lived. Her eyes, when they opened, were white with cataracts, but Dante had the distinct impression she saw far more clearly than anyone with normal vision. The Lecan Prime, she rasped, her gaze fixing on Arya's sleeping form. Finally. I've been waiting so very long. You knew she would be born? Elena asked. I knew someone would be born. The bloodline was too strong to stay dormant forever. The question was never if, but when. The Oracle gestured for them to sit. You want to know her future. You want to know if she can be saved from what she is. Can she? Dante asked bluntly. The Oracle was silent for a long moment, her twisted fingers tracing patterns in the air. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of prophecy. The child born of duty and destiny shall stand at the convergence of 3 paths. In one future, she unites the scattered kingdoms under unprecedented peace, bringing an end to centuries of war and fear. In another, her power consumes her, and she becomes the destroyer of all wolfkind, leaving only ashes and extinction. In the third, the Oracle's voice dropped to barely a whisper. In the third, she is taken by those who have waited in shadow, and her power is twisted to serve an ancient evil that has slumbered since the first prime fell. How do we ensure the first path? Elena demanded. How do we save her? Control. She must learn absolute control of her abilities before her first full shift. If she reaches 7 years old without mastery, the power will master her instead. She will become what she fears most, a monster that kills without conscience, without memory, without mercy. For years, Dante said. We have 4 years to teach her something no one has taught in 8 centuries. Less than 4 years, the oracle corrected. Training a Lecan Prime requires a sacrifice of blood and bond. One of you must anchor her, tie your life force to hers so completely that your heartbeat becomes her rhythm, your breath becomes her calm. If she loses control, the anchor pulls her back. But, the old woman's blind eyes seem to bore into them. If she loses control too catastrophically, the anchor dies with her. You would be betting your life that she can learn. That she can be saved. Elena didn't hesitate. I'll do it. No, Dante said immediately. I will. She's my daughter. She's our daughter. And you've already sacrificed 3 years running and hiding and barely surviving. It's my turn. They argued in fierce whispers while the oracle watched with what might have been amusement. Finally, Marcus cleared his throat. Perhaps, he said carefully, the decision isn't yours to make. Arya had woken during their argument. She stood between her parents now, her small hand reaching for each of theirs. Both, she said simply, with the clarity that sometimes came from children who didn't understand why something couldn't be done. I want both of you. Please don't make me choose. The oracle's laugh was dry as autumn leaves. The child has wisdom the parents lack. So be it. Dual anchors, one blood, one bond. Mother and father, tied to daughter. But know this, the ritual has never been attempted with 2 anchors. You may save her, or you may simply ensure you all die together. We'll take that chance, Elena and Dante said in unison. They emerged from the cave system to find disaster waiting. Marcus, Elena's former alpha, not Dante's beta who shared the name, had arrived with a full battalion. The Crescent Ridge pack filled the valley, hundreds of wolves in both human and animal form. At their center stood Marcus himself, older than Dante by a decade, his face carved from granite and cruelty. Elena, he called out, his voice carrying across the distance. It's time to come home. Elena's hand tightened on Arya's. I have no home in your pack. On the contrary. You were pledged to me before you ever went to the Alpha King. That pledge was never formally severed. You are still mine by pack law. I rejected that pledge when I ran 3 years ago. You rejected nothing. You fled like a coward. Marcus's smile was sharp. But I am a merciful alpha. I'm willing to overlook your transgression. Return to me now, fulfill the mate bond you were always meant for, and I will call off all hostilities against the child. More, I will acknowledge her sovereignty over my pack, give her the loyalty and resources of Crescent Ridge. Your daughter becomes princess of 2 kingdoms instead of 1. And if I refuse? Elena's voice was steady despite the fear Dante could scent on her. Then I invoke the right of reclamation. You were pledged to me first. Pack law says I can claim what was stolen, and in this case, that includes any offspring produced during the theft. Marcus's eyes glinted. Refuse me, and Arya becomes property of Crescent Ridge Pack. I'll raise her myself, train her myself, use her power as I see fit. It was perfectly legal. Dante had already checked the ancient laws, hoping to find a loophole. There was none. If Elena had been formally pledged to Marcus before she came to Dante, and if that pledge was never officially dissolved, then Marcus had legitimate claim to her and any children she bore. 3 days, Marcus continued. I'll give you 3 days to consider. After that, I take what's mine by force if necessary. He left with his army, the threat hanging in the air like smoke. That night, Dante barely slept. He pored over pack law, searching desperately for some escape clause, some technicality that would free Elena from Marcus's claim. But the law was clear, written in blood and tradition going back 1,000 years. He was still reading when Marcus, his beta, his friend, knocked and entered without waiting for permission. I found something, Marcus said grimly. Something you need to see. The documents were old, sealed records from 3 years ago. Communications between Alpha Marcus of Crescent Ridge and various genetic researchers. Test results for pack members. And one name that appeared again and again, Elena Volkov. He knew, Dante said slowly, the horror dawning. Marcus knew what Elena was before he sent her to me. Not just knew. Engineered it. Marcus's voice was tight with barely controlled rage. Look at the dates. He had Elena's genetics tested 2 years before the Peace Summit. Discovered she carried dormant Leakin Prime markers. Spent the next 2 years suppressing her wolf, keeping her weak, waiting for the right opportunity. The Peace Summit. Where he offered her as a gift to seal the treaty. He knew you'd sleep with her, it was expected, part of the political dance. He was counting on it. He wanted you to get her pregnant, to create a Leakin Prime child he could later reclaim. Dante's hands clenched on the documents. She was never a peace offering. She was a broodmare for his ambitions. And now he's coming to collect his investment. Marcus's jaw was tight. Dante, there's only one way out of this that I can see, and you're not going to like it. But Dante was already ahead of him, the terrible solution crystallizing in his mind with brutal clarity. The Grand Summit was held on neutral ground, a massive amphitheater carved into the mountainside where pack representatives had gathered for centuries to settle disputes. Every major pack in the region sent delegates. This wasn't just about Elena and Arya anymore, it was about the future of werewolf politics, about power and law and tradition. Alpha Marcus of Crescent Ridge stood on one side of the arena floor, confident and smug. Elena stood on the other, Arya clutched in her arms, Dante at her side. Elena Volkov, the arbiter intoned, an ancient wolf whose job was to ensure pack law was followed. You stand accused of breaking a formal mate pledge and bearing a child outside that pledge. How do you answer? Elena's voice didn't waver. I answer that the pledge was made under false pretenses. I was not informed of my true genetic heritage. I was not given a choice. I was used as a tool for another's ambition. The circumstances of the pledge do not invalidate the pledge itself, the arbiter replied. Alpha Marcus has invoked the right of reclamation. You have 3 choices: return to him willingly, reject him and lose all claim to your daughter, or find a champion to fight in your stead for your freedom. I'll fight for her, Dante said immediately. You cannot, the arbiter said. You are politically compromised. The child's father, and the one who benefits from breaking the pledge. Pack law requires a neutral champion. Which was exactly what Marcus had been counting on. There was no neutral champion strong enough to defeat an alpha in his prime, especially not one fighting for possession of a Leakin Prime. Dante stepped forward into the center of the arena. Then I invoke a different law, he said clearly. One that supersedes the right of reclamation. The crowd murmured, confused. Marcus's smile faltered. I, Dante Blackthorn, Alpha King of the Blackthorn Pack, formally reject my title and all political power associated with it. I declare myself rogue, without pack, without territory, without authority. Gasps erupted from the assembled wolves. Elena's face went white. Even the arbiter looked shocked. Dante, no, Elena whispered. You can't. I can. I am. Dante's voice carried across the amphitheater with absolute certainty. Pack law states that a rogue has no political obligations, no formal alliances, no legal standing in pack disputes. Elena's pledge was to a pack alpha. I am no longer an alpha. I am nothing. Therefore, any obligation she had to me through our daughter is dissolved. Marcus has no claim. You idiot, Marcus snarled. You're throwing away a kingdom for a woman who's going to choose me anyway. Am I? Dante turned to Elena, and for the first time since this nightmare began, he allowed himself to be completely vulnerable. Elena, I should have fought for you 3 years ago. Should have searched harder, loved better, trusted more. I'm not asking you to choose me now. I'm freeing you to make your own choice, without pack law or politics or anyone's claim over you. Whatever you decide, I'll respect it. But know this, his voice roughened. You are my mate. You were always my mate. And I will spend the rest of my life proving I deserve you, if you'll let me. Elena stared at him, tears streaming down her face. Then she handed Arya to Dr. Chin in the crowd and walked to the center of the arena. Not to Dante. To Marcus. Dante's heart stopped. Around them, the crowd held its collective breath. Elena stopped 3 feet from Marcus, her spine straight, her eyes blazing. You thought you were so clever, she said softly. Suppressing my wolf. Weakening me. Making me believe I was nothing special. Sending me to Dante like a lamb to slaughter, expecting I'd come crawling back with your weapon growing in my belly. Marcus's smile was sharp. It worked, didn't it? It did. But you made one mistake. Elena's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. You underestimated what a mother would do for her child. Then she shifted. But this wasn't the weak, trembling wolf that had fought in the rite of severance. This was something else entirely. Elena's wolf form blazed with power, her fur gleaming silver white, her eyes molten gold. She was massive, nearly as large as an alpha, which should have been impossible for a female omega. The crowd gasped. Even Marcus took a step back. My wolf wasn't dormant because I was weak, Elena's voice echoed from her wolf form, another impossible feat. She was dormant because she was protecting our daughter. Pouring every ounce of strength into shielding Arya from those who would harm her. But Arya doesn't need that protection anymore. She has her father. She has her pack. She has herself. Marcus shifted, his own wolf large and battle-scarred. You think you can challenge me? I'm an alpha. And I'm a mother who will burn down kingdoms to keep my daughter safe. The fight was brutal and short. Marcus was experienced, vicious, fighting to dominate and control. But Elena fought with something he couldn't match, the mate bond fully recognized and accepted, flooding her with Dante's strength, and the maternal fury of 3 years spent running and hiding and watching her daughter suffer. She was magnificent. When Marcus finally fell, bloodied and broken, Elena stood over him in human form, breathing hard but victorious. The pledge is broken, she declared. Not by law, not by champions, but by the right of combat. I reject you, Marcus. I reject your pack, your ambitions, and any claim you ever had on me or mine. The arbiter's voice rang out, witnessed and acknowledged. Elena Volkov is free. The council convened an emergency session that night. Dante stood before them, no longer as Alpha King but as nothing, a rogue without rank or standing. But when he spoke, the room listened. Pack law is broken, he said quietly. It's been broken for centuries, favoring strength over justice, tradition over truth. Today, we have a chance to change that. To build something better. Counselor Margaret spoke carefully. What do you propose? Arya is crown princess, that much hasn't changed. She commands loyalty from every wolf present through the prime bond. But she's 3 years old. She needs parents, not a council. She needs guidance, not politics. Dante looked at Elena, standing beside him, her hand in his. I propose Elena and I serve as co-regents until Arya comes of age. We guide her, train her, help her become what she's meant to be. And we start rebuilding pack law from the ground up, law that protects the vulnerable, that honors choice, that puts family before politics. You have no authority to propose anything, one counselor protested. You rejected your title. Then give me a new one, Dante challenged. Or don't. It doesn't matter. Because whether you acknowledge it or not, Elena and I will be raising our daughter together. The only question is whether you'll support us or fight us. The vote was closer than Dante would have liked. But in the end, the council agreed, perhaps because they recognized the truth in his words, or perhaps because Arya's prime bond left them little choice. The kingdoms began tentative unification, not through conquest or forced alliances, but through the symbol of a child who commanded loyalty without cruelty, who represented hope instead of fear. 3 weeks later, Arya performed her song again. Not for judges or prize money. Not for survival or desperate gambits. Simply because Dante asked if she'd sing for them. They were in the private quarters that had been prepared for their new family, spacious but comfortable, with windows overlooking the forest and a small room just for Arya filled with toys and books and normal things a 3-year-old should enjoy. Arya stood in the middle of the living room, Mr. Buttons under one arm, and sang the ancient lullaby her mother had taught her. Dante listened to the melody he'd heard that first night on the talent show stage, but this time he understood what it meant. It wasn't just a mating song. It was a promise, a mother's promise to keep her daughter safe, to love her unconditionally, to stand between her and the darkness no matter the cost. Elena had been singing that promise for 3 years, alone and afraid, with no one to help her. She would never be alone again. When Arya finished, both parents applauded. She took a wobbly bow, giggling, and ran to jump into Dante's arms. He caught her easily, pulled Elena close with his other arm, and for the first time in 3 years, maybe in his whole life, felt completely at peace. "Love you, Daddy," Arya said, the words still new and wonderful. "Love you, Mama." "We love you too, Piccola," Dante murmured against her hair. "Forever and always," Elena added, her voice thick with emotion. They stood like that for a long moment, the 3 of them wrapped together, a family forged from duty and destiny but held together by choice and love. Then Arya's small voice broke the peace, casual and innocent in the way only children could be. "The bad man in my dream says when I turn 7, he's coming for me." Dante and Elena both froze. "What bad man, baby?" Elena asked carefully. "The one with no face. He watches me sometimes when I sleep. He says I'm special. He says he's been waiting a very long time for someone like me." Arya looked up at her parents with wide, guileless eyes. "He says he has friends who want to meet me. Lots and lots of friends." Dante and Elena exchanged a look over their daughter's head. The oracle's warning echoed in both their minds. In the third path, she is taken by those who have waited in shadow, and her power is twisted to serve an ancient evil. There was a fourth faction. Something old, patient, and powerful enough to hide from every pack's awareness for centuries. Waiting for a Leakin Prime to be born. Waiting for Arya. The real threat hadn't revealed itself yet. But it was coming. Dante pulled his family closer, his wolf alert and protective. They had 4 years to train Arya, to prepare her, to anchor her power before it consumed her. For years to build the life she deserved while knowing that something ancient and evil was counting down the days until it could claim her. For years to turn a terrified child into whatever she needed to be to survive what was coming. As Arya settled between her parents, already yawning, already forgetting the nightmare man as children did, Elena whispered what they were both thinking. "We'll be ready." Dante hoped she was right. Outside the windows, the forest was dark and still. But somewhere in those shadows, something waited. Something patient. Something that had been hunting Leakin Primes for 800 years and finally had one within reach. The war was over. But the real battle was just beginning. Epilogue, 4 years later. The morning of Arya's 7th birthday dawned clear and bright, sunlight streaming through the windows of the Blackthorn estate like liquid gold. In the kitchen, Elena hummed while preparing pancakes, real ones, with chocolate chips and whipped cream, the kind she'd only been able to dream about during those years in rundown motels. "Mama, you're burning them," a voice said from the doorway, amused and knowing. Elena turned to find her daughter leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed in an achingly familiar gesture she'd picked up from Dante. At 7 years old, Arya was tall for her age, all long limbs and wild dark hair that refused to be tamed. Her eyes, still that remarkable gold that marked her as different, sparkled with mischief and intelligence beyond her years. "I am not burning them, you little critic. I'm making them extra crispy. That's what Daddy says when he burns toast. Your father is a terrible liar, and apparently, so am I." Elena laughed, flipping the slightly too dark pancakes onto a plate. "Happy birthday, baby." Arya crossed the kitchen in 3 quick strides and wrapped her arms around her mother's waist. She was already up to Elena's shoulder, growing like a weed despite Elena's attempts to keep her small and safe forever. Thanks, Mama. Is Daddy still sleeping? Your father had patrol until 4 a.m. Let's give him another hour before we wake him with birthday chaos. Can we at least jump on the bed? Absolutely not. Can I jump on the bed? Still no. Arya grinned, unrepentant, and stole a chocolate chip from the bowl. Worth a try. They ate breakfast together in comfortable silence, the kind that came from 4 years of mornings just like this, safe mornings, peaceful mornings, mornings where the biggest concern was slightly burnt pancakes instead of loan sharks or assassins or nightmare prophecies. For years since that terrible night when Arya had first spoken of the faceless man in her dreams. For years of training, preparation, and constant vigilance. For years of learning to be a family while preparing for a war that might never come. Or might come today. Mama? Arya's voice pulled Elena from her dark thoughts. You're doing the worried face again. I don't have a worried face. You totally do. Your eyebrows do this thing. Arya demonstrated, scrunching her face into an exaggerated expression of concern that was so accurate Elena couldn't help but laugh. Fine. I'm a little worried. It's your 7th birthday. That's a big deal for any werewolf, but especially for you. Arya's smile faded slightly. She was 7 now, old enough to understand what today meant. Her first full transformation was coming, tonight, under the full moon. The moment the Oracle had warned them about. The moment when Arya would either master her Leakin prime power or be consumed by it. The moment when everything they'd worked for would be tested. I'm scared, Arya admitted quietly, and Elena's heart cracked at the vulnerability in her daughter's voice. What if I can't control it? What if the monster takes over? Elena moved around the table and knelt beside her daughter's chair, taking both small hands in hers. Listen to me. You are not a monster. You are my brave, brilliant, beautiful daughter. And you're not alone in this. Your father and I are your anchors, remember? We're connected to you. We'll pull you back if you start to drift. But what if? No what ifs. We've been training for 4 years. Every day, working on control. You can move objects with your mind now. You can sense other wolves from miles away. You can even dampen your own power when you need to. Elena squeezed her hands gently. You're ready, Arya. And even if you're not, even if something goes wrong, we'll face it together. All 3 of us. Arya nodded, blinking back tears. Then she threw her arms around Elena's neck and held on tight. I love you, Mama. I love you too, baby. Forever and always. They stayed like that until they heard footsteps on the stairs, heavy, familiar footsteps that made both their hearts lift. Dante appeared in the kitchen doorway, hair mussed from sleep, wearing sweatpants and an old t-shirt instead of his usual alpha regalia. He looked tired, patrol had clearly been rough. But his face lit up when he saw them. There's my birthday girl, he said, opening his arms. Arya launched herself at him, and Dante caught her with the practiced ease of 4 years' worth of morning hugs. 7 years old. When did you get so grown up? I've been growing for a while, Daddy. You just haven't noticed because you see me every day. Smart Alec. Dante kissed the top of her head, then met Elena's eyes over their daughter's shoulder. The look they exchanged said everything. Today's the day. Are we ready? We have to be. So, Dante said, setting Arya down. I believe there's a birthday tradition in this family. Something about presents? Arya's eyes widened. Presents. I forgot about presents. How could you forget about presents? Elena asked, laughing. You've been leaving not-so-subtle hints for weeks. I was being subtle. You left a drawing of a telescope on my desk with hint hint written in sparkly markers. That's subtle for me. They moved to the living room, where a small pile of wrapped gifts waited. Arya tore into them with 7-year-old enthusiasm. A new telescope from Elena. She'd been obsessed with astronomy lately, a set of books on ancient wolf history from Dante, because their daughter was as much a bookworm as a wild child, and a beautiful silver locket from both parents together. "Open it," Elena said softly. Inside the locket were two tiny photos, one of Elena, one of Dante, and an inscription in the old tongue, "Anchored in love." Arya stared at it for a long moment, then carefully fastened it around her neck. "I'll wear it tonight. During the transformation. So you're both with me." "We'll be right there with you," Dante promised. Every step of the way. The morning passed in a blur of birthday activities. They went for a hike in the forest, Arya's favorite thing, running wild among the trees. They had a picnic lunch by the stream where Dante taught her to skip stones. They spent the afternoon in the training grounds, going through the meditation exercises one more time, making sure Arya's mental shields were strong. And through it all, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The party that evening was small by pack standards, just close friends and family. Dr. Chen came with her mate and their new baby. Marcus, Dante's beta, not the dead alpha, arrived with his partner and a ridiculously large stuffed wolf that made Arya squeal with delight. Even some of the council members stopped by, their earlier resistance to Elena and Dante's co-regency long since transformed into genuine respect. But the most surprising guest arrived just as the sun began to set. The Oracle. She looked exactly as she had 4 years ago, ancient, withered, those blind white eyes seeing everything. She moved through the crowd with surprising grace, wolves parting instinctively to let her pass. "Leakin Prime," she said, her voice carrying despite its frailty. "It's time." The party went quiet. Arya stood frozen beside the birthday cake, her hand clutching the locket around her neck. "Time for what?" Dante asked, moving to stand protectively beside his daughter. "Time for the truth." The Oracle's smile was gentle. "Time for the child to understand what she's been preparing for." "We know what she's preparing for," Elena said sharply. "The first transformation. We've been training." "You've been training for the wrong thing." The words fell like stones into still water. Dante and Elena exchanged alarmed glances. "What do you mean?" Dante demanded. The Oracle turned her blind gaze to Arya. "Child, tell me about the faceless man in your dreams." Arya hesitated, then spoke quietly. "He comes sometimes. Watches me. Says he's waiting. Says he has friends who want to meet me. And you've been afraid of him." "Yes." "Good. Fear is wisdom when it comes to things you don't understand." The Oracle moved closer. "But tell me, child. Has he ever hurt you in these dreams?" Arya frowned, thinking. "No. He just watches. And talks sometimes. He seems sad." "Sad," the Oracle repeated. "Not angry. Not hungry. Sad." "What are you getting at?" Dante growled, his patience wearing thin. "I'm getting at the fact that I lied to you 4 years ago." The Oracle's voice was calm despite the gasps that rippled through the crowd. "Or rather, I told you a truth, but not the whole truth. The faceless man you've been fearing isn't coming to take Arya. He's been protecting her." Elena's world tilted sideways. "What?" "4 years ago, I told you there was a fourth faction, something ancient that had been waiting for a Leakin Prime. That was true. What I didn't tell you was that this faction has been protecting Leakin Primes, not hunting them. They're called the Keepers, and they've existed in shadow for 8 centuries, ever since the last Prime was murdered by fearful packs. They've been waiting for another Prime to be born so they could finally emerge and teach what was lost. Why didn't you tell us this 4 years ago?" Dante's voice was dangerously quiet. "Because you needed to be afraid," the Oracle said simply. "You needed to believe the worst was coming so you would train her properly, protect her fiercely, prepare her completely. If I'd told you she was safe, you would have relaxed. Gotten complacent. And the training, the anchoring, the control, the discipline, all of it was necessary not to save her from destruction, but to prepare her for her true purpose. Which is Elena asked, though part of her already knew the answer. The oracle smiled. To heal what was broken. To unite what was scattered. To bring peace not through force or fear, but through the power of a child who commands loyalty without cruelty. Everything I told you was true. Arya will either unite all werewolf kingdoms under unprecedented peace, or she will destroy them. But the choice was never about control versus chaos. It was about whether she would have the love and support she needed to become what she was always meant to be. Arya's small voice cut through the stunned silence. So the man in my dreams isn't bad? No, child. His name is Keeper Thomas, and he's very, very old. He's been watching over you, waiting until you were ready to begin your real training. Training in the ancient ways, the lost knowledge of Lycan primes. Your parents taught you control. He will teach you purpose. I don't understand, Arya said, and she sounded so young, so overwhelmed. Dante knelt beside his daughter, taking her face gently in his hands. You don't have to understand everything right now. But here's what I know, your mother and I have spent 4 years preparing you for tonight. The oracle says we prepared you well. So tonight, when you transform for the first time, you're going to remember everything we taught you. You're going to hold on to your anchor, he touched the locket around her neck. And you're going to come back to us. And tomorrow, we'll figure out the rest together. As a family. Promise? Arya whispered. Promise. The transformation circle was ancient, carved into stone in a clearing deep in pack territory. Every important pack member was present, not just to witness, but to lend their strength if needed. The full moon hung heavy and bright overhead, calling to every wolf present. Arya stood in the center of the circle, wearing simple clothes that would tear away easily when she shifted. Elena and Dante stood on either side of her, their hands on her shoulders, the physical manifestation of the anchor bond they'd forged 4 years ago. I'm ready, Arya said, and her voice barely shook. We're with you, Elena whispered. Every second. The transformation, when it came, was beautiful. Arya's first shift was supposed to be painful, difficult, a struggle between human and wolf consciousness. But Arya dropped to all fours with practiced grace, her body flowing into wolf form like water finding its level. For years of meditation, for years of understanding her dual nature, for years of preparation made what should have been agony into something almost elegant. Her wolf was magnificent, silver-white like Elena's, but larger, more powerful. Her eyes blazed pure gold, Lycan prime gold, and when she threw back her head and howled, every wolf present felt the call in their bones. The pack bond that had formed 4 years ago flared to life, stronger now, more certain. Arya wasn't just their alpha by accident of power. She was their alpha by choice, by love, by the years they'd all spent watching her grow from terrified toddler into this incredible child who commanded without commanding, who led without dominating, who made them all want to be better. Dante and Elena shifted too, their wolves flanking their daughters, and for a moment, the three of them simply stood together under the moonlight, a family, a pack, a promise fulfilled. Then Arya took off running, and her parents followed, racing through the forest with their daughter between them. Joy radiated from Arya's wolf, pure and uncomplicated. This was what she'd been waiting for, not the power, not the destiny, but simply the freedom to run with her parents under the full moon. They ran until Arya grew tired, until the initial rush of first transformation began to fade. Then they curled up together in a small clearing, 3 wolves resting in a pile, Arya safely cocooned between her parents. When they shifted back to human form as dawn approached, Arya was crying, but they were happy tears. I did it, she whispered. I controlled it. I stayed me. You did it, Dante confirmed, pulling both his girls close. I'm so proud of you, Piccola. We both are, Elena added, kissing her daughter's forehead. You were amazing. The celebration that followed lasted 3 days. Packs from across the region sent representatives to witness Arya's successful transformation, a Lycan prime who had achieved control at 7 years old, something thought impossible. On the 3rd day, Keeper Thomas finally revealed himself. He wasn't faceless after all. He was an old man with kind eyes and gentle hands, who brought with him books and scrolls and knowledge that had been hidden for centuries. He bowed to Arya with genuine respect. "I've waited a long time to meet you in person, little Alpha," he said. "When you're ready, I have much to teach you. But there's no rush. You're only 7. First, be a child. Play, learn, grow. The destiny can wait a little longer." Arya looked up at her parents. Dante nodded. Elena smiled. "Okay," Arya said. "But can I still do regular kid stuff? Like go to school and have friends and learn to ride a bike?" "Absolutely," Thomas said. "In fact, I insist on it. The greatest leaders are those who remember what it's like to be ordinary." 6 months later, Elena stood in the doorway of Arya's bedroom, watching her daughter sleep peacefully for the first time in years. No nightmares. No fear. Just a 7-year-old girl clutching a worn teddy bear, dreaming whatever dreams 7-year-olds had. Dante's arms wrapped around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. "She's going to be okay," he murmured. "I know. I just can't quite believe it yet." Elena leaned back against him. "For years ago, I was sleeping in a motel room, terrified that those men would come back, that I'd lose her, that she'd never be safe. And now she's sleeping in a castle, surrounded by people who love her, with parents who would burn down the world to keep her safe." Dante pressed a kiss to her temple. "And tomorrow, she's going to wake up and demand we make her pancakes, not burnt ones, and then she's going to spend the afternoon learning ancient Lecan Prime meditation techniques and complaining about her math homework. Because that's our life now. Beautifully, impossibly normal chaos." Elena laughed softly. "When did you become such an optimist?" "The day a 3-year-old sang a song on stage and turned my entire world upside down." Dante turned her in his arms so they were face to face. "The day I met my mate and my daughter and realized that being Alpha King meant nothing compared to being their partner and father." "You're making me cry." "Good. I love you when you cry. You get that little wrinkle right here," he touched the bridge of her nose gently. "And your eyes do this sparkly thing, and I remember all over again why I fell in love with you 3 years before I was smart enough to admit it." 7 years, Elena corrected. "You fell in love with me 7 years ago. You were just too stubborn to realize it. 7 years ago, I fell in lust with you. Love took a little longer." Dante's smile was soft. "About 3 seconds longer, if I'm being honest." They stood like that for a long moment, wrapped in each other's arms, watching their daughter sleep. Outside, the pack moved through its nightly routines, guards changing shifts, wolves running patrol, the ordinary magic of a functioning pack. Inside, a family existed in the quiet space between one day and the next. "Dante?" Elena whispered. Thank you. For not giving up on us. For fighting for us. For becoming the man I always hoped you could be." "Elena, I didn't become anything. You and Arya just helped me remember who I was underneath all the politics and power." He kissed her softly. "I'm the one who should be thanking you. For running. For keeping her safe. For giving me a chance to be her father even after I'd done nothing to earn it. You earned it every day for 4 years. Then I'll keep earning it for the rest of my life." They left Arya's door cracked open, she still preferred it that way, like knowing her parents were close, and retreated to their own room. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new lessons, new steps in Arya's training. But tonight, they could simply be Elena and Dante, mates and partners and parents, wrapped in each other's arms and the peace they'd fought so hard to create. In her room, Arya's eyes opened briefly. She touched the locket around her neck, anchored in love, and smiled. The faceless man, Keeper Thomas, had been in her dreams again tonight, but this time, instead of watching from the shadows, he'd been teaching her to juggle balls of light, laughing when she dropped them, encouraging her when she got frustrated. It had been a good dream. She could hear her parents in the next room, their voices low and warm, the sound of 2 people who loved each other completely. It was the best sound in the world, better than any lullaby. Outside her window, the moon hung bright and full, calling to the wolf inside her. But Arya didn't need to answer tonight. She'd already run. She'd already hunted. She'd already felt the joy of being fully herself, wolf and human, child and destiny, all woven together into something uniquely her. Tomorrow, she'd wake up and demand pancakes. She'd go to training with Keeper Thomas and learn about ancient Leakin Prime abilities. She'd do her homework, and play with her friends, and probably get into at least one argument with her parents about why she should be allowed to stay up past her bedtime. It was worth a shot. Tomorrow, she'd be Crown Princess Arya Blackthorn, heir to a kingdom, bridge between packs, symbol of hope for a new generation. But tonight, she was just Arya. 7 years old, loved beyond measure, and finally safe. She hugged Mr. Buttons close, whispered, "Love you, Mama, love you, Daddy," into the darkness, and let sleep claim her once more. In the shadows of her room, unseen but ever present, the bond that connected her to her parents glowed softly, 2 threads of gold and silver, anchoring her to love, tethering her to family, ensuring she would never again be alone or afraid or abandoned. The girl who once sang for her mother's survival now sang simply because she wanted to. And that made all the difference. The end. Years from now, when Arya Blackthorn would stand before the United Council of Werewolf Kingdoms as an adult, when she would lead the greatest era of peace her people had ever known, when historians would write about the Leakin Prime who changed everything, they would trace it all back to a single moment. Not the moment she commanded hundreds of wolves with a child's frightened power. Not the moment she survived her first transformation with impossible grace. Not even the moment she killed an assassin without waking. No, they would trace it back to a small girl standing on an oversized stage, singing for her mother, singing for survival, singing a lullaby that was really a promise. I will protect you. I will love you. I will never abandon you. And in the end, that promise, kept by 2 parents who learned to be a family, saved not just a child, but an entire world. Thank you for listening to this story. Like, share and subscribe for more.